Okay, so we are live. So nice to see you again, Lindsay.
Thank you, Georgie. Nice to see you too.
Thanks. And yeah, really looking forward to having a chat with you and hearing how you've been since we were working together as well.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for a moment for people to join us.
No
and then we can get going and you can start telling people about your journey, basically. So when did we stop working together out of interest? For people who are listening.
Well, that's an interesting question. I wish I could remember. I think it was probably about 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago. The time has gone very, very fast, but yeah, maybe about 4 months. Yeah.
Okay. So I know it's been a good few months anyway. I should have looked because I was looking through.
Well, I should have looked too, but I'm not worried about these smaller details. It was a few months ago.
Yeah, it's a little detail.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, okay, so let's get started anyway, because there'll be people who are going to be watching this later anyway.
Yes.
And although they can't ask questions later on, then hopefully we can answer any that come along as we're going along. But maybe if you'd like to start by maybe starting, where would you like to start? How about that, Lindsay?
Wow. So start at the beginning, if there is a beginning.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So
it's at which beginning? That's what I was wondering.
I don't know. Would it be useful to explain, I guess, how I came to find SIRPA and how I came to find you?
Yeah. Yes, why not?
Yeah,
okay. Back at a later
and I'll try to be brief because I know when I haven't used the word pain for a very, 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 very long time on purpose, which if anyone knows anything about this work will sort of understand why. But I guess looking at, shall we say, TMS symptoms, and please forgive me, everybody, because I'm not an expert like Georgie. I would class myself as a civilian who found SIRPA, and I'm very early on, really, I think, probably in my journey, but nonetheless, it really has been life-changing. But I might use terminology or words that aren't, strictly speaking, the correct ones. So you can absolutely correct me.
There's quite a few different terminologies. For mind-body condition.
Yeah.
But just before you start, I just want to say hello to people who've joined us. And if you'd like to say hello in the comments box, then do. And then at some point, we'll ask the questions as well. But in the meantime, off you go, Lindsay.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everybody. So essentially, I think now having been through the process of doing the SIRPA program, when I really look back, because we get to look at our timeline and sort of explore who we are in so many different ways. But when I look at myself as a child, so I'll start there. There were symptoms in my childhood. I had quite an anxious period just to do with schooling and going to school. There were tummy aches and there were allergies like nose allergies and things like that, which I would never have connected the two had I come across this work. So there was stuff kind of there in the childhood. And then I always thought that my first and my main symptom was my back. Or Gordon, as I now refer to him as.
Yes.
We named him. But
let me just say that when I'm working with people, we tend to encourage people not to talk about their pain, and often to just rename it once, to address your fears around the pain and what you can do, what you can't do, and then to give it a silly name or just something. And I remember you chose Gordon. You were different in that you chose different names for each one.
Yeah, I had different little bits and bobs going on, so I gave.
As long as you knew, I know what the group we ran last year. They told me recently that they all started using the word Scoobies, so that rather than talking about my migraine or my back pain or whatever, they just said my Scooby. And I think that's lovely, and it was just light-hearted. And
exactly.
If you've got somebody if your husband in the morning says, "How's Gordon today?" It's a lot more light-hearted than saying, "How's your back pain?"
Yeah,
which
exactly.
So sorry about that.
Yeah, no, don't worry. No, it's really.
And in the meantime, hello to Sandra and Fred. Nice to see you both here.
Yes, hello. So if I look back, I always thought in my head that my back, I am going to use the word pain for the sake of this argument, the conversation, but it started after the birth of my first child, my little girl. But actually, when I went through the timeline, I realised that I had back pain in my very early 20s. Once when I was studying, and also once when, oddly enough, my parents were going through a divorce. So when I was looking at the timeline and things that had happened and symptoms, I was able to quite quickly, not in all cases, and I think in some cases you never really maybe find that root cause and, you know, pushing to find the reason why. But in some of those episodes, I was able to pinpoint, oh, okay, that's really interesting.
And that in itself is helpful, isn't it? Because then it reinforces, okay, this is stress induced. So even if you can't remember the others, you can then work from now moving forward.
Exactly. But the main story, I guess, for me really started about 5 months after my little girl was born. And I bent over to pop her into her little carry cot. It felt like my back had snapped. It literally felt like an elastic band had pinged. I was in absolute agony. I was on the floor, on my own, in the house, petrified by this pain, couldn't get to a phone, didn't have a mobile near me at that point. And that was the first time that I was kind of struck down by what I call really intense pain. And I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought I'd broken something. I thought maybe I had a slipped disc or something like that. Anyhow, I don't want to bore everyone too much with everything that happened to me, but essentially this back pain at that stage would come and go. I didn't have a fear so much attached to it. It went away after 2 weeks. Surprise, surprise. I lived my life a little bit, and then lo and behold, oh no, it's happened again. And that could have been about a year later, and it would be really intense, and I was struck down by it. And I was very...
What were you doing at that point? Were you aware that you'd done anything physically, or did you blame it on anything?
Oh, I was probably blaming it. I was blaming it at the time. My beliefs at the time was because I keep bending over and putting my little girl's heavy. She's getting heavier. I'm bending in and out of the car seats, constant bending. I put it all down to the physical action of lifting and bending and putting down. And then, so really for the next few years until I had my second child, my little boy, I had it on and off, but it wasn't constant pain. It would come and it would go, and I was less fearful of it. But then when it started to happen again, and the pain essentially stayed with me. So my worst episode, I would say, was when Teo, my little boy, was about, 2. And basically my back went into spasm. I couldn't move. I was in bed for about 2 weeks. I had to have someone to help me get on and off the toilet. I was frightened to breathe. It was just, it was horrendous. Anyway, for that period of time, incidentally, I also just sort of sat in bed and cried an awful lot. And I remember one of my really dearest friends from college speaking to me, and she said to me at the time, Lindsay, it's just your body telling you need a break. You know, it's just your body's way of telling you that you really need to look after yourself. And at the time I was like, what? Need a break? And, you know, all of that malarkey. And ever since that point, so after that episode, I had constant pain. And it did really start to impact my everyday life. It just did. And it took away a lot of my joy, I would say. Became obsessive about it. How is it? The minute I woke up, how's it feeling? What is it feeling? Or if I do this, will I hurt myself? Will I do that? Will it continue? And I just became obsessed with it. And obviously my movement, as I sort of had mentioned to you before, my movement universe just got smaller and smaller and smaller. I took on advice from people: don't lift heavy things, don't keep bending, bend this way, don't twist your pelvic. I was told so many different things that I literally would be upright and straight, or I'd be flat in a bed. So I get home, because I had at that time, my life, upon reflection, probably was due to just being a young mum with 2 children. I had a full-time job. I was practically running a small business. I was responsible for a lot. And I think I was just completely and utterly overwhelmed. I didn't know it at the time, but now I look back at it and I think, wow, okay, you did a lot. That was a lot. And that was your body's way of saying, you need a break. You need
and
to,
presumably just that spasm and tightness holding you rigid upright and when lying down.
Yeah. I mean, literally, it was all exactly all fed into. I became stiff and rigid and fearful, and just it just was a really quite a miserable place to be. So I had MRI scans. I'd seen. So what had I done? I'd been to doctors. Yes, I'd been given painkillers, but I have to say, something within me, even when the pain was really bad, something within me never wanted to. It was a personal choice. Rely on painkillers. So there was already something in me somewhere that thought, no, there's just got to be another way here. So yes, I took them when it was extremely painful, just to get me over that hump. I did do Pilates because I was told it was good for my back. I now do Pilates because I absolutely love it. And I love the feeling I get from it. And I love that mind-body connection. So I no longer do it because it's good for me. I do it because I just love it and I'm enjoying it. And and I just saw lots of different osteopaths. And
what did the scans show?
Well, the scan was I had bulging discs, and a bit. When you don't understand any of this, and someone tells you this, and they use this terminology,
scary.
And I'm a very visual person. I've got a very active imagination. So when someone tells me I've got bulging discs, that to me is like, oh my God, they're all out of shape and they're all wonky.
Yeah, pressing on things and
there's something wrong with me here. I was told,
and out of interest, we know that people who have scans are more likely to have interventions, and it's going to be more costly because of the fear that then drives the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
So no wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And then subsequently I was told by all sorts of different people, it's DDD. I can never say that, Georgie, so if you want to say that. I can never say that, so I'll leave that to you. Sacroiliac joint dysfunction. I mean, you name it, I was told all these, things. Anyway, I guess fast forwarding, do you have any other questions, or should I just go to how I came out of this? Is that
well, I think just to reinforce the fact that we know that, for example, when somebody's 50, 80% of people will have bulging discs and will have disc degeneration. So these are just normal abnormalities, just to reinforce that. Sacroiliac joint disorder or a syndrome, it's just an explanatory term. It's not a cause of pain. And so it's just worth pointing that out at the moment. And also just, we've got a few people listening in now. Welcome, everybody. Hello to Edith from Melbourne, one of our SIRPA trained practitioners. And if any of you have any questions that you want to ask, don't just rely on me asking the questions as we're going along. Then Lindsay, I'm sure you're happy to answer any questions that come in. But no, that's fine. So basically you had this pain on and off for 10 years, didn't you? And then I think before you saw me, for 4 years, it had really been quite debilitating for you.
Yeah, exactly. So just got to a stage where it just impacted my everyday living, and it got to a point where I just, it was quite hopeless. As I said, I had the MRI scan, and the basic message was, that's it. There's nothing anyone can do about this. You just got to get on with it. And it's just a really depressing thought that really I'm 40 years old. I'm far from dead. I have hopefully quite a long time to enjoy my life, and I'd like to enjoy it fully. So I guess at the back of my mind was always a question mark about that. But that was quite a depressing moment, really, in the whole journey, to think that there's nothing that can be done. And, whenever I saw, and lots of osteopaths, and by the way, I absolutely think they do fantastic work. I really do. I'm not knocking it at all. I think there is a great need for them. And when you have a real injury and all of that, I just want to put that out there, because I'm not dissing them at all. I did go and see my first glimmer of hope in this whole story, is I did see a fantastic osteopath who I believe actually, Georgie, has been on one of your training sessions. She's SIRPA. She's definitely done some SIRPA stuff. She hadn't done it when I first saw her. So I saw her probably a year before lockdown, and she had a completely different approach. She was a cranial osteopath, and it was the first time I'd ever heard of anyone utter the words nervous system. And I just thought, what? I've got a problem with my back. What's nervous system got to do with all of this? I had no idea. And during lockdown happened, and she sent me a text message about you.
Right.
Which was a sunny June day, and I got a message, and she said, Lindsay, I just really would love you to just have a look at Georgie's work and have a look at SIRPA's work. I think this might benefit you. What do you think? ... Have a look. So me being me, I immediately got the website up, and I remember sitting in my back garden and I watched some YouTube videos of people talking just as I am today. Mm-hmm. And I just literally howled and burst into tears and just thought, oh my goodness me, this is me. I think
so. There was hope there.
There was real hope. I get quite emotional about it because, it was just the first time I thought, oh my goodness me, yes, people who understand where I'm coming from, but likewise, wow, that really could, I think this really could be me. So I then thought, well, I read your book and I looked at the case studies and I read the website, and I thought, I'm going to sign up for the online program. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to see if I can give this a whirl. And actually, I should say that lovely osteopath also shared a book with me, which is, I think I've seen you mention somewhere on one of your blogs, which is Explain Pain.
Yes.
If you're at the beginning of this journey, it's that was the first point at which I thought, ooh, okay, so this is something to do with not just a physical problem with my body. This is something that's going on, emotionally and, my up here. And I think there's something I can do about this. So I followed your program. I did the program, which I learned so much from. And already I could feel the benefit. So physically and symptom-wise, I could already feel a real benefit. Correct. But I just felt that I needed a little extra something just to cement it. I think it was all completely new to me. Lots of things that I was taking on board, and then I found you.
Excellent, and it's so interesting that we hear about book recoveries, for example, especially people who've read Dr. Sana's books and said, people can recover just by reading a book. And that does happen from reading any of our books. It does happen. But there are many more people who actually need more help and understanding. And sometimes that is an online program or the Curable app, for example. And for many more, actually, they need more individualized support and guidance, one-to-one, which is what you decided that you required at that point. But at this point, I just want to mention Edith has asked, and hello, Alex, as well. Edith has said, what part of the online program was the most helpful for you? That's a good question, Edith.
Oh, wow. What wasn't, Edith? I knew someone would ask me this question. I think for me personally, first of all, and Georgie probably hit the nail on the head, I can totally and utterly see how this is such an individual. It's really about learning. For me, it goes far beyond my symptoms and my pain now. I think it's just so much more about understanding fundamentally who I am. Yes. I understood much more about what, I learned that I was highly sensitive, for example, which is not a bad thing. It's just that I could acknowledge that, and I realized that, and that helped me with the way that I do deal with certain situations, or in fact, my relationships with other people. I can honestly say there was so many. I did write my little list. Personality traits ties into who understanding who I am. So there's a lot that will be in the program about personality traits and beliefs. So I've heard many people say this, but I definitely fall under people pleaser. I'm a bit like a little bouncy Labrador who wants to be everybody's friend. I just want to be liked. I want to be your friend. That pleasing and being conscientious. hardworking, I hope.
Yeah.
You know, trying to so all of those things, not letting anybody down. God, I could go on for hours. I won't.
Lovely personality traits, but also
yes,
ways that we can cause stress for ourselves.
Yes, definitely.
We don't recognise that.
Yeah, absolutely. So there were just so many. Yes, exactly. And then obviously becoming aware. So becoming aware of bodily sensations, which were linked to triggers in emotion. So becoming aware when there was, oh, hang on, yeah, I can feel there's something going on here physically. Whereas before all of this, I would have just plowed on through, would have kept on pushing.
Sorry to interrupt. So what you're saying is basically in the past, the pain would have put a stop to what you were doing that might be uncomfortable or feeling like a threat to you. Whereas actually when you became more emotionally aware, you learned to deal with those and to recognize earlier when you were feeling resistance to something.
Yes.
And you could deal with that, which means you don't need the pain.
Yeah, exactly. And all of the work with the timeline really helped as well, identifying, dealing with things maybe that I hadn't repressed emotions from the past, or situations or scenarios that maybe actually at the time I had just glossed over, got on with life and battled through and didn't really. We all have things, and also appreciating that. Because that internal self chatter, or don't be silly, it's just this, Lindsay. Don't be, actually being kinder to myself, like thinking, well, no, actually, this is quite a lot. That was quite a bad moment. That was a lot to deal with. So there was
more self-compassion.
Much more self-compassion. Journaling for me is really important and has really, really helped. Again, I don't particularly like confrontation. Used to not particularly be very comfortable with feeling angry, or any emotions. It doesn't just have to be anger. It could be absolutely anything, to be honest with you. But I find journaling's very useful if I am triggered by something that makes me feel anxious or angry. But likewise, defragging my brains, which are really, really busy. So, lots of thoughts and lots of things whooshing around in my head. So making sure, particularly if it's to do with work, so making sure that I wrap up at the end of the day and I just get it all off my chest and put it all down onto paper. I find journaling is one of the key things actually for me. There's practically nothing that I haven't done. I'm sorry, this is a really long-winded explanation.
It's not at all. What I'm just, and actually what Alex is saying sounds familiar, and he absolutely gets all this now as well. So yes, Alex has been on his own journey, and he did say thank you for sharing. Something I want to ask is, and don't forget, anybody else who wants to ask questions, put the comments in put a comment in the box, and we can answer those as well. How easy did you find it to get to grips with becoming more emotionally aware and using somatic tracking and just noticing the sensations in your body rather than just facing the pain when it came?
Not so easy to start with, actually, at first. I think it's developing a new sense. And it took me a little while, I think, to get the hang of it, and to actually stop and feel. And then the really important bits is to reassure yourself. But it took, I would probably say it wasn't immediate, but it's become so much easier. And also I found things like meditation and stopping and being aware when I meditate has really helped. So I remember once you described an exercise where you're just, almost like I envisage my body is kind of like in a fish bowl and I'm the fish and I'm sort of just swimming around. That's the way I do it. So I'm quite visual sometimes. I do quite use visualization. It's just a curious little fish swimming around my body, and just there might be something that this fish notices, but they just notice it and they identify it. And maybe whilst I'm meditating, I might think, oh, okay, well then what might that be about, Lindsay? It might be, sometimes it comes to me, sometimes it's really surprising what comes out, what it evokes. And other times it's just pure curiosity and it's lovely and it's relaxing. But I've definitely become a lot more aware of what's going on internally.
Great.
Yeah.
And what about, you've presumably, well, I know you have got become much more aware of not just now what causes stress, and being able to, and recognizing that when you're triggered in the now, that it's often bringing up some unresolved stuff as well, or triggering a learned behavior or something. So I know you're much more aware of that and then dealing with that in the moment. But I know that you then reflected on your childhood, your life, you know, moving forwards, and began to see how that impacted you. And how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting as well. It's something that I probably would never, ever have done had I sort of found this work. And again, I think that's the key part to understanding myself a whole lot better. And again, being compassionate and kind to myself. So yeah, it has really helped me. I think the main thing to point out, as I think you've said many times as well, is that, you know, life's always going to throw a curveball here and there. You know, we cannot systematically you know, unfortunately, remove stressors in our life. But this understanding and linking things back and going, oh, okay, I think I feel this way because of X, Y, and Z, definitely has helped me understand it and resolve it much more quickly, if that makes sense. So to point certain things which have happened and to go, okay, well, that's probably why I'm feeling this way right now, but it's absolutely fine. It's okay, and I'm okay. So yeah, I think that's I think because I'm in such, I still feel I've really only been following this practice, I think, for about a year maximum. So I feel like I'm a baby to all of this, and I'm just taking my first steps because I'm really aware that it's an ever-changing learning journey, if you like. But that has definitely helped to be able to look at how I'm feeling right now and go, oh, it's okay. I think it's because of this.
And acknowledge that.
And
I know you used journaling to address some of the things from the past as well, and you found that helpful, didn't you?
Yeah, very helpful.
How did you go about that?
Yeah, so basically I just did, I think with the things which happened in the past, I did the timeline and I wrote down events on the timeline which I felt that might emotionally have not, as I said, not have been quite big emotional moments, or maybe had not been, you know, resolved. And for each of those, I took the subject matter. Sometimes I broke it up into different sort of parts because some of the subjects are quite large, if you like. But I really did journal around them. And I think one of the exercises we did was to talk to myself, write to myself as a child, basically.
Yes.
Sorry. And how I was feeling. And then as an adult, write back to myself as that child, and just really pinpoint, well, you know, look at all the things that you've achieved and that you've managed to do. And it just brings that kind of peace. So I've done quite a bit of inner child stuff as well. And I found that really, really helpful, really useful. But yes, I definitely feel that journaling around certain key, particularly, really emotional points in your life do definitely help to resolve and to deal with those emotions and get them all out. And then you kind of move on.
Yeah, absolutely. So out of interest, what difference has this made in your life now?
This whole process?
The whole process. How's your life changed? It's unrecognizable, I think, almost. I mean, in the sense that in many, many ways. So physically, I'll do the physical bit first. For me, by the time I found Georgie, I was really lucky because my physical symptoms were already starting to diminish, if that's the right kind of... From having worked through the program.
Yeah, exactly. And I had all sorts of different funny things. Before I found SIRPA, I was getting rashes as well, and I had shoulder pain, and it was just ringing in my ears, all sorts of different funny things. But now physically, I run now, and I would never, points for me. And I never thought that, I always thought to myself, I told myself, well, you can't run, you can't do, physical, anything too physical, anything too cardiovascular. You just can't do it, Lindsay. It's going to set you off. But I started to run, and oh my goodness, I actually enjoyed it. This is quite a revelation. So I started last November running, and I did do an app to help me get going, but then I just scrapped that because what I found was it really helped me to be mindful. So I actually find that running experience really peaceful. It's just me. It's just what I can see. Sometimes it's what I can smell. It might be people cooking dinner or someone wearing a lovely perfume at the bus stop. Or, I go into a place which is really peaceful, which sounds really odd. Even though it's quite, physical sometimes. I try not to push myself too much. So I managed to do 10K, which was great. I've done it a few times. I've done it when I knew I was going to do it. It's all to do with mindset. I left that back door and I thought, today I'm just going to go for a really lovely long run and see how far I can go.
Without being hard on yourself and pushing yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, but to be honest with you, sometimes this week, because of life and work, I've done a couple of 20-minute runs, and that's absolutely fine. And I think that's one of the things to point out is that part of this process is that, and I remember it's something you told me, I'm going to run because I would like to go for a run.
Yes.
Not, oh my God, I haven't run for a week, what's going to happen to me? And, I should go for a run. I'm just enjoying the freedom. And every time I do it, it reinforces I am physically fit. So my little affirmation that I came up with Georgie was, I'm loving being flexible, strong, and free. And I have to say, I use that sometimes as a mantra when I'm running, when I'm got to get back home and I've gone a bit too far. I just use that because I just think, well, I can do this. And it just brings me a lot of joy. So physically running, my photograph for this was obviously bouncing on just bouncing on the trampoline in the garden with my little boy, being rough and tumble with the kids. I was playing basketball in the back garden yesterday. So physically the fear, I would have been so fearful. I mean, literally fearful of, as I said, sometimes breathing, which I know sounds daft, but, so overcoming that fear and Pilates, which I love because it's very calm. And again, I find it's a very nice moment to be mindful. I'm just thinking about the breathing and my exercises that I'm doing. So my life has also changed in terms of my mindset and my outlook on life. And I think for me, that's just as joyous as not having the pain anymore. It's just, I see life through different glasses. Through different lenses.
Absolutely. Fantastic. You said earlier on something about the job that you were in. Does that mean you have changed your job?
No, I haven't changed my job. I am in the same job, but I think my approach to it has changed and my mindset around that has changed and I view things differently. But I am also just started to do some. I am studying. I've just started doing a course online in an area of which fascinates me, which could lead on to other things. ... So no pressure.
Fantastic.
I'm just putting it out there. So I think I am still in that job and. I've worked on my feelings around that and some of the things that I find stressful to do with that job. And likewise, I'm also filling my life, I guess, with other things which are nourishing my soul.
Yes.
So
important. And I know you're quite creative and that you enjoyed starting doing sort of creative things and singing and dancing. So you included dance, for example, initially.
So exactly. The one thing, it's a shame actually. The one thing I haven't ticked off my list yet is the singing, because I think that was something that's an interesting point, because I did train. I went to the Royal Academy of Music and I was a trained singer and I love singing and it absolutely brings me joy. I don't want to be a show off. I just really want to be part of something. And I love the feeling that it gives me. And actually of the, when you work with SIRPA or Georgie, there's obviously the house of sort of different elements.
House of health.
Yeah, exactly. Which you sort of can look at and to give that your life an extra layer of meaning. And just, I keep using the word joy, but it's something for you.
Yes, how to nurture yourself mentally.
Yeah, exactly. And so the singing is definitely still Alexa in the kitchen with my kids screaming at me. But I do it much more frequently. And I do want to join a choir. And I was going to join one, but the course that I'm making excuses now, Georgie. But the course that I am doing would have been the same night as the choir, but it's coming. And I keep telling myself it's all right because it's coming. And if it doesn't,
you've made a choice.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, I'm just going to start my own one. So
brilliant.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so shall we come to some of the comments? Let me get my glasses on here. Yeah. So Alex is saying that being kind to myself was absolutely foreign to me, but slowly learning, still struggling to feel my feelings and journaling. But thanks so much for sharing. Liz says, one of my challenges is that when the pain or symptoms are really severe, my anxiety and fears come rushing back in. Have you had any experience of how to deal with that? And that's interesting, Liz, because I've just written down here fears, because that's what I was going to ask you is how did you, I mean, I know, but I want you to talk about how did you deal with your fears? So great question, Liz.
Yeah, Liz, that's really valid and quite interesting. Before I had my one-to-one work with Georgie, I had followed the program, and I was probably 3/4 of the way through it. And this was last August, and throughout the whole crazy sort of first year of COVID, we had booked a holiday at the beginning of that year to go away with the kids, and it was 2 days before we were due to go away. Crazily enough, we were actually leaving the country and we were still able to go and all of that. And I bent over in the kitchen to take my recycling bag outside, all very glamorous, and my back went. It went into spasm. And I had started the program with SIRPA. And so previously, I would have immediately panicked, would have been frozen with fear. Literally, I get this awful cold pain, of sort of watery, icy feeling that goes through my body. I shake. So when I go into spasm, my whole body shakes. My mind races. I am petrified. I was petrified. I would have then probably reached out for the painkillers and then would have called to go and see an osteopath. And I would have done all of those things, all in a tiz-was, and my mind would have been racing. Oh my God, I'm going on holiday. What if, what, how, what am I going to do?
Just to point out, I remember when you talked to me, you said you realized when you were doing this that you've been feeling, that you felt anxious most of your life.
Yes.
So, that
absolutely.
Absolutely. It escalated.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I hadn't realized I'd been anxious.
It's normal for you.
Yeah, exactly. But this time, what did I do? I went straight upstairs, got myself upstairs to this quiet bedroom, plugged in some very soothing music, sat on the edge of the bed and breathed very, very deeply for probably about 10 minutes, very calmly. And I just said,
deeply, but slowly,
very slowly, just really slowly. And I just kept repeating to myself, Lindsay, you're just really frightened. You're really scared. I understand that. I know this has been bad in the past, but you are so much better and you're moving forward. And this is absolutely going to be okay. You are going to be okay. And I think because I believed so strongly, so passionately, that it was going to be okay and that this journey was the one for me, that this was TMS. I think probably I was worked up about packing for my holiday, talk about third world problems, but that was mine at the time. It was kids and life and COVID, and I'd had quite a year of it, like we all had with COVID, so homeschooling.
And travelling through COVID.
Oh my God, the whole shebang. And just would I still have a job? Because to be honest with you, our business was decimated. All of those things added up to this little moment. So I calmed myself right down. I kept telling myself it was going to be absolutely okay to, just take it easy and believe it will be fine. And I absolutely promise you, it calmed down. Yes, I still had the pain, and the next day it was still there, but not as bad. And then we got on a plane, and even traveling on planes before with my back, I would have been worried about sitting. But I got on the plane, I went on holiday, and I am not lying. I was swimming in the sea on the first day of the holiday. And by the end of the holiday, I think I barely even thought about my back. So that for me at that stage was the biggest piece of evidence that, and I was meditating and I was journaling. So I did all of those things because I found them helpful for me and reassured myself. And yeah, I came back, and for me, that was just like the biggest thumbs up to this approach, because it just proved, yeah.
Real evidence for you. And I noticed
Yes.
that I encourage people to write an evidence sheet, so that would have gone on the evidence sheet.
Yeah, exactly. It would have gone
and
into
it really just shows that, you know, we know that fear and anxiety drives pain. It causes it to persist and fuels it. And what do we do when we have pain? But we get tense. And if it's a fight or flight response, which it is when we have pain because it's a reaction to a perceived threat, then we get tense because that's part of fight or flight, ready to fight or flee. And so what do we do when we get the pain is we then reinforce that by doing, you know, by tensing up and short breath, you know, really short, jerky breathing. Whereas what you did was recognize that and then do the opposite and deliberately slow, calm breathing. It doesn't need to be deep, just really slow breathing, preferably through the nose, and just really then self-soothing. So I talk about pause, breathe, feel, reassure. So pause to actually do what you did, take yourself up to your room, sit on the edge of the bed, calm your breathing down, just as and when you can. Sometimes it's not easy to do that if you're really anxious. So it's just gradually calming your breathing down, preferably breathing through your nose, and then feeling, noticing how you're feeling inside. Maybe it's somatic tracking, noticing what's happening without fear, just with curiosity, and then gradually, and then reassuring yourself, and then gradually things settle. So you did the opposite of what you would have done in the past. So well done.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was a lifesaver. And yeah, ever since then, that was the last episode I've had. And that was, you know, well over a year, a couple of months ago. Yeah, so it's really positive.
Okay, so we've got a few more comments coming. Liz says, thank you. Really helpful and encouraging. So Alex says he's been doing this work for 9 months now and finally seeing real progress. His main symptoms have really calmed down, but there have been so many other symptoms. They've been having a bit of a crazy party recently, and that's a good way to talk about it, actually, Alex. Thinking of it as a party and being interested and curious rather than scared. Although I know, obviously, that at times there'll be frustration and some fear. Anyway, a bit of a party recently with foot pain, shoulder pain, forearm, not sure, forearm maybe. It's been mad, but that's fine. I know I'm going in the right direction. I've been managing to get back to hill walking at least once a month. So great. That is really good, Alex. Well done. And at times it does take time. You know, in fact, if you listen to the success story that Jim Prusak did with Louise recently, who's a physio, you know, she started with the books, the online programs. She's a physio, so that can make it more challenging to start changing all that we've been trained. And then it was doing some group work and then working one-to-one. And she's had an amazing journey and doing really, really well now. But it can take time. And this learning, if you're anxious especially, learning to settle in your body and become more emotionally aware, it can be really challenging and take time. And it's about being persistent, being kind to yourself, self-compassionate, and just taking your time. So Sandra says that she's been flirting with my work for many years on her chronic pain journey, but never signed up properly. I'm enjoying listening to your sharing today. Thank you. I realised that I've already been employing a lot of SIRPA strategies through my experiences. I was diagnosed with MS 3 years ago. They reckon I probably had it for over 30 years, even when I wasn't training to be a physio. I would like to explore further. I've tended to blame everything on my MS. Yeah, and that's interesting because it's like if somebody is going through the menopause or they have MS or fibromyalgia diagnosis, for example, any symptom that you have is put down to being due to that condition, which is not always the case. So even though MS is a condition that does have pathophysiological changes, we all have emotions, we all deal with stress. So there's so much that we can do to actually help the symptoms. And not only that, we know, for example, that adverse childhood experiences, past trauma, is linked with autoimmune disorders and cancer and heart problems and pain, etc. in later life. And therefore, working on those things can just make such a difference. So yeah, nice to see you here, Sandra. It's great. Okay, back to Alex. Alex says, "Hi, Lindsay. My goodness, everything you say resonates so much, especially with the back spasms and being anxious. And I've also managed to talk myself out of back spasms a few times over the last few months. It's proof this works and gives you confidence to keep it all going. So good to hear these stories. So encouraging to know you're on the right track. Thanks so much." Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. So,
that's brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. So what do you think, let's say moving forward now, what are the main things that are maybe not even just strategies, but awareness and understanding of strategies do you use now moving forward? Because this isn't about getting rid of pain, is it? And you've already mentioned this. This is a personal development journey, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think it would be untrue to say that, I don't get twinges here and there. And as I said, I've had, like Alex, I've had some other weird little things that have cropped up over the last few months. But the thing about it now is I'm human. And as I said, things happen in life. I still have a busy life. I still have children and I love them dearly, but they're very demanding and they can be annoying. Yes, they can. They can push your buttons and, you have clients at work or you just have life, life just throws stuff at you. And I'm so very, very fortunate, I know, compared to many, many people. But part of this is understanding that, but it does affect me and it's okay. And I'm okay to feel a certain way. But yeah, essentially, moving forwards, wow. I'm just still very hungry, I guess, to learn more. This area absolutely has sparked a real passion in me. I can't explain it. I think once you've found it, you see the difference that it makes to your life. And it's not just your symptoms, it's the way you view life. I just can't let it go. So, I think it's important to say that for me, it's been a slow, gradual shift. I couldn't tell you the day that I suddenly bent over normally to get my pots and pans out of the cupboard and just did it. It's slow, but moving forwards, I'm just really excited because I know there's just so much more that I can enrich my life with. And that's reading materials and understanding myself more and other people even more and looking at different facets of my life. So one of your practitioners is Gemma, isn't it? Gemma.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm really fascinated by her work. And I might...
So works with strengths, Clifton Strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And there are lots of... she fascinates me. So I think I'll probably reach out to her at some point because I just think that's something I would really benefit from. I'm much more open to trying something different and different things. What will I keep doing? I would definitely think I will keep journaling because it really does work for me. I just think that's something that just enables me to, as I said, to just unpick my brains, my busy brains. I will continue to be self-compassionate. And also one of the biggest learning curves from this whole exercise is to give myself some time and not to feel guilty about it. I think what got me into the state that I was in was because I just ignored myself without being woe is me. As I said, I was a busy working mom with kids and that's what happens. And no one ever really said to me, Lindsay, it's perfectly okay for you to sit down for 10, maybe 20 minutes a day and just focus on yourself. So I'm really loving giving me some me time. And telling other people what I want, not in a bossy way, but I'm much more assertive about saying, actually, that doesn't suit me right now. I will be able to do that for you, but I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm much clearer with other people about what I can and can't do.
So you have your boundaries.
What I'm willing to do. Yeah, I have my boundaries. And I just think, just sort of this thirst I have for knowledge and learning, and it's really exciting. And I just think I'm going to learn a lot more. So they're definitely things that I will.
And I think you can't unlearn what you've learned. Can you? So, for example, when I came across this work, I couldn't go back to, it made sense. For me, it was like an epiphany, and it explained symptoms I had. It explained so many of the clients' symptoms that I was seeing and had seen in the past. And I couldn't then just go back and just do what I'd always done and just forget what I was learning. And then you can't in your own life. And I think it's lovely when you were talking about what you're doing moving forward. This is not about strategies, is it? It's more about understanding the concept, understanding why we get pain, not going into the fear, but recognizing it's just messages from within. Maybe there's something we need to address. Becoming more emotionally aware, being more self-compassionate, taking time out for us, things like that. So this is not about, well, I need to journal, I need to do this, I need to do that. But in the meantime, rushing around and keeping on doing 101 things all at the same time, feeling awful when you say no to somebody without learning to do that. And all this is stuff that we're learning as we go along, and you just can't go back to...
No, you can't go back.
Where you were.
There's one thing I was going to say. This is not an academic thing. This is experiential. You could read, and when I said the thirst for knowledge, I don't mean that in an academic sense, really. It just really fascinates and interests me, and further gives me evidence that this is absolutely, I wholeheartedly believe in this. I think you could really wrap yourself up in knots if you tried to read every single book going, every single theory going. It's so much about the felt self. It's so much about the feeling. And the journey of the emotional journey that you're going on. And I just don't think a book, the only person fundamentally that is going to facilitate this change is you. You have all the help with fantastic people like Georgie and your team, and God knows without you, I don't know where I'd be right now. And I'm so thankful, I'm so grateful. But ultimately the changes have to sink into you. They have to sink into your body, and you just have to accept and trust and go with it. And if I was nearly swore then, but if you're having a bad day, it's okay. We have bad days. That's what I'm learning. It's all right. It's okay. It's perfectly okay. Tomorrow's another day. In half an hour's, and is in half an hour's time. This will shift. That's one of the things I've really has helped me, is anchored me, is to think this is not going to last, and this is going to pass, and off we go, and we move forwards.
Fantastic. And it's not about positive and negative emotions. Yes, some emotions might be more uncomfortable than others, but they're okay too. They're normal emotions. We're allowed to actually feel those.
Exactly.
And I think that's lovely, the way you explained that, Lindsay. I really do. And I hear from so many people who say, well, I've read all the books, I've done this program, I've done that program, I really get this, I understand it.
You're pushing so hard.
And they're trying so hard, and they're learning so much, and they're being very hyper vigilant and everything and needing to understand, but that then can be a way that actually prevents them from being able to actually feel and just be able to just let go of trying. And people find that really hard to actually just even understand that concept of letting go, surrendering, submitting. But then what did you do when you just said, you sat on the bed, you didn't fight the pain, you didn't try and get rid of it, you surrendered. And you actually let go and listen to yourself, and was self-compassionate. And that's the way forward. But it's very hard if you're in your head overthinking all the time.
I think the biggest moment for me during this journey is when I labelled Gordon, and I journaled to Gordon, and I said to Gordon, thank you, Gordon. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for me, because without him, I would not be living the life that I'm living now. And he opened my eyes, and that's how I feel, because without that, it was, I am going to swear, forgive me, universe, it was shit at the time. There were some shit times with Gordon, but without Gordon, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I wouldn't be moving forwards, and I wouldn't have all of this fantastic stuff in front of me. And I just think when I made peace with Gordon, something massive changed within me. I was just really thankful for it. And that was not an easy moment, but the release that I got from that was it was amazing. And it's about not having that conflict. It's about accepting and moving forwards.
Absolutely. And without that, you wouldn't have learned all that you've learned.
Exactly.
You can move forward in such a different way.
Exactly.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Does anybody else? Oh, there's another question. Sorry about this. Yeah, another question. So Liz is saying, thank you, really helpful and encouraging. And then she says, I find that hearing real life experiences like these is so motivating for me. I cry with emotion when I hear people's stories of getting their lives back, of all the things they thought they'd lost forever. It seems to give all the more joy when they get them back, and spurs on to new adventures as well. Absolutely, Liz. And, you know, okay, I've been doing this work since 2007, but throughout this, over maybe 3 or 4 times, I felt a real shiver come over me. And just when you were talking about Gordon then, that was one of the occasions. And again, in the past, I probably wouldn't have clicked, I wouldn't have linked what it was related to, but it's just a response within my body, a sensation. And it's just showing me, you know, wow, you know, this is fabulous. And I still am so moved by, you know, patients, people like you, Lindsay, who've done so well, and all I've done is facilitate, and it's just really lovely to hear your story.
Yeah, but I just genuinely, you know, the reason I did this is because I just thought, gosh, if I meet anybody now, I have to be really careful. But if I do meet anybody who's had ongoing pain, I will mention it. I try not to get too excited, because I do feel really passionate about it, and it is so life-changing. And I think you have to be really careful, because some people just aren't quite ready. But I do mention it, and I do sow the seed. And I just think, if I'd had this 10 years ago, if someone had just sat down and said, wow, you could just try this, you just give it a go. So if this helps, you know, one person out there, then, you know, yeah, job done, because it's such powerful stuff. Yeah, so worthwhile.
And I think you've already helped more than one person, Lindsay. Yeah, I think this is fabulous, and I know that you'll be helping a lot of people with this. And it is, you know, you had the message from your friend a few years ago saying about your back pain. You had that seed sown at that point, but you weren't ready at that point.
Yeah.
And over the following years, gradually, you became more ready. And that's the thing, you know, quite often people will, you know, read my book and they don't get it, or one of the others, and then another book, or they get it but maybe don't make much progress, and then they'll read another book or watch a recovery program, and they'll gain an insight. And it's often a layering, and it's a way of maybe different ways of things being explained as well. So sometimes these insights come because of one thing somebody said, but it's often because it's laying on top of the other things that are flourishing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so and Abigail, hello there. So she says, thank you for your time, and a special thanks to Lindsay for being so open and honest about her journey. So,
you're welcome.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you, everybody else, for listening. It's been fabulous, really interesting. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
No, you're welcome. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, everyone. And I hope that you have a really positive journey ahead of you too.